the Eastern Mediterranean has witnessed legal disputes regarding the maritime boundaries, the resource rights and jurisdiction, and UNCLOS serves as the primary legal instrument for resolving these disputes, as it provides guidelines for determining the extent of maritime zones, including the exclusive economic zone, the continental shelf of the countries and the states, the territorial waters. So when disputes arise, the UNCLOS offers mechanisms for peaceful settlements, such as negotiation, mediation, arbitration. So adherence to UNCLOS and its interpretation plays a crucial role in addressing the legal disputes and promoting stability in a region that has a legal dispute.
Hello and welcome to the Diplomatic Academy The Conversation podcast. I'm your host, Petros Petrikos. This episode focuses on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, also known as UNCLOS, and the energy prospects we see in the Eastern Mediterranean. I'm joined by Maria Athanasiou, who is an expert in this field. Hello, Maria. It's a great pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Hello, Pedro. Thank you for hosting me.
Just a few words about Maria. Maria Athanasiou holds a bachelor's degree in law from the University of South Wales and a master's degree in international commercial law from the Cardiff University. She is also pursuing her doctorate in the field on the law of the sea at the University of Nicosia. And being a member of the Cyprus Bar Association, Maria is also the founder of Athanasiou and Associates LLC based in Cyprus. Maria is a co-author of the book The Future of the Maritime Industry and a lecturer in law at the European University and Cyprus Maritime Academy. She is also involved in various exhibitions concerning energy security in the framework of international law. So Maria, as I've said, you're an expert in the field, and it's a great pleasure to have you with us today for this episode. I'd just like to take a moment to break down a bit on your research interests, to share maybe with our listeners a few words on what your research consists of and what you're currently investigating through your doctoral studies.
Basically, my research is based in the offshore pipelines project in general, and my main research focuses on the multi-legislative analysis of the state interest, the rights, the obligations in offshore pipeline projects, and in the Eastern Mediterranean. So, of course, by investigating the laws, regulation behind the underwater pipeline project and analyzing the state interest in those projects, of course, this is a relevant and complex area of study covering the law of the sea. So I'm currently analyzing in my study and examining the offshore pipeline projects such as TANAP, which is the Trans-Anatolia Natural Gas Pipeline, and the Nord Stream pipeline. Of course, it's important to mention that these projects involve multiple legal jurisdictions, so often is required the coordination and cooperation of different laws of each state. So these projects negotiate with different territories, cross borders. They are involving various stakeholders, states, energy companies, and many regulatory bodies. So my research is likely to delve into various aspects like the legal and regulatory frameworks by analyzing and examining the international, regional and national levels governing offshore pipeline projects. This can involve analyzing international conventions, treaties, agreements, and any domestic legislation that can be applicable. Of course, my research is focusing on the state interest and stakeholders agreements, the rights, obligations of the other actors in offshore pipeline projects. And of course, this can involve, again, exploring principles of international law, such as sovereignty, freedom of navigation, environmental protection, and any rights arising from the transit and access to resources. Again, it can focus, my main research can focus in dispute resolution mechanism if we see any disputes arising in those projects by investigating the mechanism available for the resolution of disputes that can arise in the planning, construction, and operation of an offshore pipeline project. And of course, this may include examining the international arbitration negotiation process and the role of the international organizations in mitigating conflicts. So, let's say by conducting a multi-legislative analysis, my research can contribute to a deeper understanding of the complex legal and regulatory landscape of those offshore pipeline projects, and can shed light on the interplay between state interests, rights, obligation in this context. Energy security is very important into this project, so I'm trying to combine energy security with these projects. This is a brief understanding of what I'm doing.
Brilliant. Yeah, it is a brief understanding, but as you've mentioned a couple of times during your response, it's a complex issue that you're tackling with. And definitely, it has a lot of layers. It's interdisciplinary. You're looking at the legal context, you're looking at international law, you're looking at energy, and some aspects of this might also involve issues around energy security. And this is very topical at the moment because of renewed interest, I would say, in current affairs in the Eastern Mediterranean and energy. Having this in mind, let's try and break things up a bit for our listeners once again. Let's start by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, so UNCLOS. What are the key takeaways of this convention?
The UNCLOS Convention, of course, is a comprehensive international treaty setting out the legal framework for the use and for the, let's say, for the conservation of the world's ocean and their resources. So some of the takeaways from UNCLOS include the territorial waters, where UNCLOS establishes the concept of the territorial waters, which can be extended up to 12 nautical miles from the coastal state's baseline. And of course, it mentions that the coastal states have full sovereignty over those waters, of course, including the airspace above and the seabed and the subsoil beneath. UNCLOS again mentions the exclusive economic zones, which grants the coastal states and extends up to 200 nautical miles from the baselines. And within this zone, the coastal state has special rights and jurisdiction over, let's say, exploration, exploitation of natural resources for both living and non-living organisms. And something that we have to mention is that another takeaway from UNCLOS is the continental shelf, which is defined as the natural prolongation of the coastal state's land territory. And again, it can be extended beyond its exclusive economic zone. So UNCLOS, another takeaway is the freedom of navigation, which of course UNCLOS guarantees the freedom of navigation for all the shipping, all the shipping industry, and for the ships of all nations, both that are in high seas and in the exclusive economic zone of the states. And this includes the innocent passage as well through the territorial waters, and of course the right to transit through international straits, again with the freedom of navigation. Another takeaway is the conservation and management of the marine resources, which UNCLOS emphasizes the sustainable use on the conservation of marine resources, and it includes, let's say, provisions for the protection, preservation of the marine environment, regulations governing pollution prevention, and of course the establishment of marine protected areas, so-called ECA areas, and which are the emission control areas. Another takeaway is the International Seabed Authority, the ISA, which UNCLOS establishes the ISA as an organization which is responsible for the regulation, control of activities that are taking place in the international seabed area beyond the national jurisdiction, of course. So UNCLOS is widely regarded as a foundational instrument within the international maritime law. So we can say that it provides a framework for the peaceful and, let's say, cooperative use of the world's ocean law and, of course, their resources, while UNCLOS is ensuring the protection and preservation of the marine environment.
It's good that you've laid out the broader spectrum of what UNCLOS is responsible for, what it covers, the bigger picture essentially of what it includes, the organizations involved, and so on. You've also referred to its mission to provide stability, peace, protect the areas in the maritime zones. But of course, narrowing it down, we see that case by case. In practice, there are differences and different applications when it comes to UNCLOS, and also when it comes to the states subscribing to UNCLOS and those who don't. That's also another contributing factor that shape the perceptions, the attitudes towards the convention. So I wanted to ask specifically about how UNCLOS itself relates to energy geopolitics, offshore pipeline laws, and the legal disputes that we've seen in the Eastern Mediterranean. Because if UNCLOS aims to provide for peace, stability, protection, and so on, then how come we have this debate and all these legal disputes that we have seen in over the past few years, even in current affairs in the Eastern Mediterranean region?
Mm-hmm. Of course, as we have said, that UNCLOS plays a significant role in the energy, geopolitics, offshore pipeline laws, the legal disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean. UNCLOS relates to each of the areas that I will mention. The first one is the energy geopolitics, as we said. It provides the legal framework for determining the maritime boundaries, let's say, the resource rights, the jurisdiction within the ocean. So in the context of energy geopolitics, it helps defining the rights of the coastal state over exploration and exploitation of those offshore energy resources, such as, let's say, oil and gas. Again, UNCLOS establishes rules for delimiting the maritime boundaries, which I think is very crucial in determining which countries have the jurisdiction over the specific areas and their associated resources. We can see it from the Cyprus case as well. So these can have direct implications for the energy exploration and production activities and can shape the geopolitical, let's say, dynamics in the region. In regards to the offshore pipeline laws that you mentioned, UNCLOS addresses the legal aspects of offshore pipelines by establishing the rules for the construction, operation, maintenance of such pipelines, which is Article 79 of UNCLOS, is very important for the maintenance of the pipelines and the cables in different maritime zones, and it sets out provisions that are related to the installation, protection of underwater cables and pipelines. It includes, again, the regulation on safety, environmental protection, the rights and responsibilities of the coastal states to the other parties involved in these projects. And in general, UNCLOS is providing a framework for coastal states to exercise their jurisdiction over offshore pipelines project within their territorial waters, so exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, and etc. Regarding the legal disputes that you mentioned in the Eastern Mediterranean, I have to mention that the Eastern Mediterranean has witnessed legal disputes regarding the maritime boundaries, the resource rights and jurisdiction. And UNCLOS in this point serves as the primary legal instrument for resolving these disputes, as it provides, as we have said, guidelines for determining the extent of maritime zones, including the exclusive economic zone, the continental shelf of the countries and the states, the territorial waters. So when disputes arise, the UNCLOS offer mechanisms for peaceful settlements, such as, let's say, negotiation, mediation, arbitration. So adherence to UNCLOS and its interpretation, if we can say it like that, it plays a crucial role in addressing the legal disputes and promoting stability in a region that has a legal dispute. I believe that in the Eastern Mediterranean, UNCLOS has been invoked in various legal disputes between countries like Cyprus, Turkey, Greece, Egypt. So these disputes involve conflicting claims, let's say, over maritime boundaries, resource rights, of course, particularly related to offshore energy resources. So we can see that UNCLOS serves as a reference point for determining those rights, responsibilities of the involved parties, and any potential resolution to these disputes.
Okay. One of the foundations of these disputes, which is the different projects that regional players may disagree with or they may have to compromise over, and this involves the offshore pipeline projects. What kind of projects have we had up until this point in the Eastern Mediterranean? To what extent are they noteworthy, and how many of them are actually still going forward at the moment?
There are several noteworthy offshore pipeline projects that have been developed or are proposed in the Eastern Mediterranean regions. One of them is the EastMed, of course, pipeline project, which is a proposed project that aims to transport natural gas from the Eastern Mediterranean to Europe. And it involves the construction of a pipeline, basically, that will connect the offshore gas fields of Israel, Cyprus, and Greece, and potentially Italy. So another one is the Leviathan-Tamar pipeline, which is an operational project that is transporting natural gas from the Leviathan and Tamar gas fields offshore to Israel. And this pipeline connects the gas fields to onshore facilities, which enables the supply of natural gas for domestic consumption and potential exporting to neighboring countries of Israel. Another one is the Egypt's gas infrastructure, which is in the Eastern Mediterranean. Is the Zohr gas field, as we know, and it was discovered in 2015, which is one of the largest gas fields in the region, and of course is located off the Egyptian coast, and has contributed significantly, we can say, in the Egypt's domestic energy supply. And of course, with this energy, Egypt, has established liquefied natural gas, so the so-called LNG facilities for exporting purposes, and for utilizing the offshore gas resources. Another one is the Aphrodite gas field, which is located offshore Cyprus and is part of the broader Levantine basin. It is estimated to hold significant natural gas reserves, and the plans have been discussed to develop the field and potentially exporting the gas through pipeline connections, again, to the neighboring countries in the Eastern Mediterranean. Another one is the Cyprus-Egypt gas pipeline, where Cyprus and Egypt have signed an agreement to construct an underwater pipeline, again, connecting their offshore gas reserves. And this pipeline will enable the transfer of natural gas resources from the Aphrodite field in Cyprus to the Egypt's existing gas infrastructure for potential exporting and distribution, let's say regional distribution. So those projects that we have mentioned represents significant efforts in the Eastern Mediterranean offshore energy resources. And of course, we can say that it establishes energy connections among countries in the region and beyond the region. So it's important to note that the development and the realization, let's say, of these projects can be influenced, of course, by various factors, of course, including geopolitical considerations, legal disputes, and political considerations, and any market dynamics.
Yeah, and as you've rightly mentioned as well, I mean, synergies over these projects and cooperation improves bilateral and multilateral relations, and also the financial prospects emerging from partnerships also shape policy among these countries that are involved in the Eastern Mediterranean, the key players, as we like to call them. But of course, at the same time, there are contestations. Okay, because as you've said, in theory and according to UNCLOS, which is rightly stated that the convention itself aims to resolve disputes. It aims to foster cooperation. It aims to enhance prospects across various fields, across various areas that fall under UNCLOS. But there are certain countries that perhaps do not really abide by UNCLOS, and that's the problem, perhaps in the Eastern Mediterranean as well. If we look at the Republic of Cyprus as a case study, for instance, it is evident that the Republic of Turkey does not really respect Cyprus's exclusive economic zone, and also Turkey does not recognize either, nor does it respect the full extent of the convention of UNCLOS. So one of the main arguments used by Turkey for that, and because you've also mentioned, you've referred to the rights of coastal states, Turkey advocates that coastal and landing states have no real rights when it comes to freedoms in the sea. And this is where things clash. This is where it gets a bit cloudy and problematic. Because on the other hand, a lot of island states have made a claim in line with UNCLOS that they do in fact have a large exclusive economic zone that extends at sea. And if we look at Cyprus, the official EEZ is actually very much extended according to how Cyprus views its own exclusive economic zone. But on the other hand, maps coming in from Turkey, they contradict this. They show that Cyprus does not even, has like the very minimal zone that extends only around its coasts. And even though Cyprus has struck agreements with countries like Egypt, as you've rightly pointed out, those are largely ignored by Turkey. They're not really fully acknowledged by Turkey. So how do you situate yourself within this debate, especially when it comes to how it is perceived by countries like Turkey, who do not really want to engage with a lot of points mentioned by UNCLOS?
Before going to the point of Turkey, we have to mention that the debate between the Republic of Cyprus and Turkey regarding the recognition and the respect of the Cyprus exclusive economic zone and UNCLOS raises complex legal and geopolitical, of course, issues. It involves differing interpretations of UNCLOS and its application to the rights and the freedoms within the coastal states in this sea. So we can say that under UNCLOS, the coastal states have the right to establish an exclusive economic zone, as we have mentioned in the beginning, extending up to 200 nautical miles from the baseline. So in which you can have special rights, jurisdiction over the exploration and exploitation of the natural resources. So this includes, as we have said, the seabed, subsoil, and the water column. So in line with UNCLOS, argues that they are entitled to a large exclusive economic zone that extends at sea. So Turkey concedes certain aspects of UNCLOS and its application, particularly concerning, let's say, the rights of the coastal and land states. And it argues, of course, for the concept of the freedom of navigation, and the asserts that coastal states should have limited rights in certain areas, and kind of this stuff. We have to mention that most countries are recognizing international law, something that Turkey must do. So Turkey should recognize international law, like the most countries, which recognize that each territory has its own exclusive economic zone. So as far as the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus is recognized by the international community, Turkey has nothing to do with the resources of Cyprus field. So only the Republic of Cyprus has sovereignty rights over their resources. In the event that, let's say for the Turkish Cypriots, for the factor of the Turkish Cypriots that Turkey is claiming, and they are concerned, in the event that they recognize the Republic of Cyprus, they can be, let's say, co-exploiters of the situation. I mean, the Turkish Cypriots, don't get me wrong on that. So it's worth noting that international legal frameworks like UNCLOS provides a basis, let's say, for resolving this kind of disputes and promoting stability in the region. So adherence to UNCLOS and its principles, it can contribute to a peaceful resolution and equitable distribution of maritime rights and resources. Of course, however, let's say, the interpretation and the application of UNCLOS in practice in specific cases like the Cypriot and the Turkish one are subject to varying perspectives and required examination to reach a consensus. So it is important to note that the international actors, including the United Nations and any other regional organization, have been involved in efforts to facilitate dialogue and find a peaceful, let's say, resolution to the disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean. But these processes aim to address the concerns of all parties involved and promote adherence to international law, including UNCLOS. So overall, the debate surrounding the recognition and the respect of the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus and the differing, of course, interpretations of UNCLOS by Cyprus and by Turkey highlights the complexity of balancing national interest, historical context, international legal frameworks in resolving those maritime disputes. So, in my opinion, finding a mutually acceptable solution that respects both rights of all the stakeholders remains a significant challenge, and it will not be solved anytime soon.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it goes back to the long, persisting, protracted conflict that we see in Cyprus, and how it also inhibits very visibly several other key areas, key opportunities for growth, for policy maturity, for equally benefiting across all sides within disputes and conflict as such, for the stakeholders to equally find stable footing and manage to overcome these challenges. And the lack of settlement when it comes to this kind of conflict, it also inhibits these areas. And Cyprus and Turkey, they're a very special case, I would say, when it comes to maritime disputes that we've seen, because it involves other things as well. It involves politics, it involves the law, of course, it involves perceptions. It's a multi-layered kind of issue. But now let's turn to Europe, because there's been, as I've said, renewed discussion on the Eastern Mediterranean, especially in the aftermath, following, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. There has been renewed interest, or at least, whispers of renewed interest for the European energy market when it comes to energy and hydrocarbon exploration in the Eastern Mediterranean. So to what extent would you say that current policies sufficiently address prospects that would include the European energy market in exploiting and exploring and exploiting energy reserves in the Eastern Mediterranean?
Mm-hmm. We have to say that the prospects for the European energy market regarding the energy and hydrocarbons exploration in the Eastern Mediterranean are significant, but face various challenges. So we can say this because the region has seen the discovery of substantial natural gas reserves in the recent years, as we can see, which has attracted attention from many European countries, of course seeking to diversify their energy resources and reduce dependence on traditional suppliers. So the exploration activities in the Eastern Mediterranean, particularly, let's say, like in countries like Israel, Cyprus, Egypt, have of course have the potential to provide new energy resources for Europe. So I believe that these resources could contribute to meeting the European energy demand, let's say, and of course enhancing the energy security in the region. So the development of offshore gas fields, such as, let's say, Leviathan, Zohr, has already resulted in increased natural gas production and export capabilities. In Cyprus, actually, we are now building the LNG offshore project outside Vasilikos that they will keep the gas for exporting and importing from Israel. So, however, the full realization of these prospects in contingent upon several factors, the geopolitical tensions and of course the territorial disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean pose challenges, of course, to energy exploration and production. So legal disputes over maritime boundaries and resource rights, as well as any overlapping claims, of course, can hinder the progress of the projects and can create uncertainties for the investors. So we can say all along with this that infrastructure and transportation considerations plays a crucial role. So the construction of pipelines or other means of transporting the gas to Europe from the Eastern Mediterranean is necessary for unlocking the full potential of the region's energy resources. So, in my opinion, the proposed Med pipeline, for example, would require substantial investments and, of course, face technical and economic challenges. So, in terms of the current policy, the European countries have expressed many times interest in diversifying their energy resources through exploration in the Eastern Mediterranean hydrocarbon reserves. So the EU has been supportive of the projects that contribute to the energy security and, of course, diversification within the region. So in these terms, the European Union's energy policy promotes, of course, cooperation, dialogue, adherence to international law, of course, including the UNCLOS, and addresses disputes and ensuring a stable investment climate. But, of course, the complexities of the geopolitical landscape and the ongoing disputes, of course, highlights the need for continued diplomatic efforts and regional cooperation in order to fully address the prospects for the European market, European energy market in the Eastern Mediterranean region. So, of course, this includes fostering dialogue among the countries involved, let's say, seeking multilateral agreements, utilizing international legal mechanism, of course, for resolving disputes and providing a stable framework for the energy exploration and production within the Eastern Mediterranean region.
Yeah, it remains an open-ended question at this point. There's a lot of moving parts, and at the same time, we still don't have. We see the willingness of players like the European Union, who, of course, by default, advocate for cooperation, stability, and so on, especially when it comes to energy, which is a crucial point and has been at the spotlight ever since over the last few months, especially for periods of extended need for energy and heating, such as during winter. And this conversation goes on, and it's like I said, an open-ended question, but it's very good to receive deeper insights on this from experts like yourself. So at this point, I'd like to thank you for sharing with the rest of us your insights, and I'd like to wish you all the best with your future work and research.
Thank you so much, and I would like to say from my side that I appreciate the opportunity to be a guest on your podcast.